But I said to Mike McGarry, or I'll say to Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, if the Phillies only got one All-Star this year, Matt Strahm might be the guy who is the most deserving pitcher on this staff. And I think that's something that's got lost in the sauce of how good the pitching's been, is that he might be the best of all the guys they have.
Yeah, I would still take Ranger Suarez if I had to pick one guy, but there's no doubt that Strahm has had an outstanding season, sort of, epitomized by that outing last night where he just blew away the Boston Red Sox, struck out the side in that inning. But there's no doubt that Strahm has been as dominating a left-handed reliever as there's been in baseball so far this season. And when you put Strahm back there with Hoffman and Alvarado, even though Alvarado's been a little shaky lately, you really have one of the best bullpens in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, last night, it's one of the few times that I think most people didn't complain that Wheeler got pulled with 88 pitches because they went to Strahm and he strikes out the sides. He looked even better. But, yeah, I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Mike. I think the one thing the Phillies are 10 games up. We're not even at the All-Star break yet, and I don't want to go crazy, but I think Rob Thompson's going to have to manage how much workload and how many innings he wants to get from his starters as we get through June, July, and August with a big lead.
Yeah, well, the goal is to have them at their best in October, right, and save some bullets in the holster, so to speak, for the postseason. That's why I didn't have a problem last night with Wheeler going 88 pitches, and I think you're going to see some outings like that where guys get pulled an inning or two early, especially as we get into the hot summer months of, June, late June, July, and August. I think you might see guys come out an inning or two early, throw 88 to 90 pitches rather than 100, 110 to make sure they're fresh for October.
Mike, you had the situation yesterday with Real Muto. Yesterday, Stubbs got the first crack. Dave Dombrowski didn't seem to indicate they were going to go outside the organization. But can they power through this if it's only for about a month or so?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have the All-Star break in there too, right? So you actually have about 4 or 5 weeks. And the reason you can survive it is because you're 26 games over 500 and you're 10 games up in the division. If you were where you were the last 2 seasons where you were kind of struggling to get back to 500 and struggling for a playoff spot, then you might need to go out and get somebody. But, Mike, I actually think this injury could benefit Real Muto and the Phillies in the long run. It almost forces Real Muto to take a vacation. I think he catches too much. I think he gets worn down sometimes as the season goes along. I think it affects his performance both at the plate and and behind the plate. So I think he's a guy who should catch less. He catches way too much. This is almost like a forced month vacation. And you talk about wanting to have guys at their October. I think in the long run, this might be a blessing in disguise for Real Muto and the Phillies.
Yeah, I know JT is a guy they said, hey, he's a warrior. He wanted to keep playing. I guess they were saying last night that he was going to kind of be a pain tolerance thing to see how long he could have kept going with this. And I guess the recommendation was made for him to kind of sit down. He said he was playing with this injury for weeks here, that he suffered it in May. But the doctor said that he could continue as a pain tolerance thing. But I guess it was recommended that he sits, so we'll see. They hit Castellanos there last night. Now, I know they said they're up 10 games, but is this just we think Turner's coming back soon, or is Castellanos a guy that you would hit in that 2 spot if it's 2 more, 3 more weeks?
Yeah, I think Turner will be back before that, and I think when Turner comes back, he slides into that second spot naturally. I understand why they kind of bumped Castellanos up there. I don't think you want to take Bohm out of the 4th spot, out of the spot there in the middle of the order, and you really need a right-hander there to break up Schwarber and Harper. So your options are limited. Castellanos is as good as anybody for right now, but I think Turner will be back shortly, and when he's back, he slides naturally into that number 2 spot. And that's why you can also kind of tolerate this Real Muto injury. If you had both Real Muto and Turner out together for a substantial amount of time, then you might say, hey, let me go get a veteran catcher. But, you have Turner coming back and Real Muto going out. And one thing this team has shown is an ability to sort of withstand injuries to their star players and somehow continue on almost without skipping a beat.
Mike, you mentioned Turner. If he's able to come back this weekend, I guess he, obviously goes back to the two-hole that you said. He would probably be playing shortstop, batting second. But I want to look at that. You talk about the two-hole. Merrifield, have they just lost confidence in him? Is he basically, hey, you're a platoon guy and that's it? Are they doing the team a disservice by not trying to maximize this guy that they targeted and spent money on?
Well, I mean, he did hit a little bit in London, right? So this is an opportunity for him to get going here. But this is a production game, and we're almost 3 months into the season right now, and Merrifield just hasn't shown it. So granted, you've got an opportunity here where you're 26 games over 500. You can give guys a little bit longer or a leash, but eventually they have to produce. And with Brandon Marsh out, this is an opportunity. But, other guys have stepped forward and taken advantage of that opportunity. Dahl, even though he was 0 for 4 last night, has had a couple of big hits. Pache has done well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a nice problem to have. It's a numbers problem. But, when given a chance, it's almost like you have to take advantage of it. And you've got to do something spectacular. That's the sort of situation Merrifield is in now because of his slow start. Now when he gets a chance, he has to really really take advantage of it.
Yeah, it just, and I agree with you. Look, you got to produce. They're certainly letting Nick Castellanos go, and I know he makes a lot more money, but it felt like, hey, they signed this guy because he was something different. He was something they didn't have, kind of that contact, speed, ball in play, not a big strikeout guy. And it's hard to get going when you're not getting those consistent at-bats. And I think we all can say he really hasn't got the consistent at-bats. And part of that could be because he's not doing anything with them. But it feels like they have opportunities to do it. Hey, Marsh is out. This guy's out. That guy out. You know what? I don't need to see David Dahl against every right-hander, but it feels like they're in a straight platoon out there.
Yeah, and it's you said a great point there. Turner went out, and you said maybe Stott shifts over to shortstop and Merrifield plays second base. Well, all of a sudden, Armando Sosa starts playing great, so he takes advantage of that opportunity, and his stock bumps up a little bit there. So it's all a matter of when that opportunity cracks open, what you can do, what you can take advantage of it, and those few times that Merrifield has had that opportunity, he just hasn't been able to come through, unfortunately for him, and it means more time on the bench for him.
It sure does, and we'll see if he's in the lineup tonight as he obviously has gotten off to a struggle start here with the Phillies. Dave Dahl got the start out there last night. Other than that, Mike, I mean, man, 10 games up. Somebody asked a question, like, do you think the Phillies have a goal that they want to win, X amount of games, or is that not something that this team really cares about?
Well, I think they're going to push the pedal to the metal. I think they realize from what they've done in the postseason before, going in hot in the postseason, and what has happened to the Atlanta Braves the past 2 postseasons, and what the Phillies did to the Atlanta Braves. I think it's a disadvantage if you take your foot off the gas those last 2 to 3 weeks of the season. It'll be interesting to see how the Phillies approach it, but I think they're going to play, pretty, full go until the end of the season and try to go into the playoffs hot. I think that's the personality of this team. That's the personality of a Bryce Harper. That's the personality of a Kyle Schwarber. I don't think you're going to tell Bryce Harper if you clinch in early September, hey, Bryce, you're only going to play 3 times a week. That's not going to wash.
No.
He's a guy who wants to be out there 7 days a week, and I think that's how they're going to play it out.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's going to be the hardest part is how many games now. We don't want to go off and say, hey, they're going to be 15 games up, but the Braves, man, right now they are scuffling along, and as they fade out here, I've said this before, I don't know that the Braves are all that interested in being in a division race this year.
Yeah, I mean, the injuries, too, with the Braves. Acuna's out, Strider's out. Maybe it's just not their year. Maybe the Braves aren't going to fire. Matt Olson isn't having a great season. A lot of their other players aren't producing at levels they produced in the past. So, hey, maybe this just isn't the Braves' year. I think the Phillies, you talk about games won. I think the Phillies are going to win about 107, 108 games, and then they're going to head into the playoffs. The problem with the situation is the Phillies, this is an all-time Phillies team, but the Dodgers are awfully good. The Yankees are awfully good. The Orioles are awfully good. And throw the Cleveland Guardians and the Milwaukee Brewers in there. I think you've really got 5 or 6 kind of super teams in baseball, and then everybody else really drops off a cliff.
Well, that was another thing about last night. I know Boston's not great, Mike, but you go to London, they come home, you figure the inevitable of like having a little bit of jet lag, having to go to Boston and then to Baltimore this weekend. The schedule makers were not kind, and yet last night, first pitch, bang, home run. Wheeler, yeah, they get the run, but then a couple errors. I mean, it looked like the Red Sox were the team that were over the pond yesterday. So it's just all kind of been, working out for this team so far. But, hey, baseball, some adversity's hanging in there. They have some right now. Turner, Realmuto, Marsh, and they've been battling through it, but we'll see what baseball throws at them next. Where are you at today, Mike?
I'm actually at the Track and Field Meet of Champions here at Pennsauken High School, the final high school event of the season, Track and Field Meet of Champions. So if you hear some cheering in the background, that's what it is.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. PressOfAC.com will have all the coverage of the track championships. Check it out at PressOfAC.com. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks, Mike. We'll see you down the road. Thanks.
As always, Mike here on a Wednesday. He'll be back Friday on the Sports Bash.